Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking one of the most profound and honestly kind of mysterious moments of silence in all of philosophical history. We're looking at a fascinating piece of ancient text known as the Ananda Sutta. In a world where we're constantly expecting immediate black and white answers to literally every complex question, there's just something incredibly powerful about refusing to answer at all. So today we're going to explore exactly why the Buddha chose complete, utter silence when he was faced with the ultimate question of human existence. I want you to put yourself in this position for just a second. Imagine you're backed into a corner, and someone demands that you provide a definitive, binary yes or no answer to the ultimate question of your very existence. Could you do it? I mean, would a simple yes or no even begin to cover the massive reality of who and what you actually are? It sounds like an impossible scenario, right? But this is exactly the situation the Buddha found himself in.
Section 1. The Ultimate Question.
To set the stage here, the Buddha, the Blessed One, is just sitting there when a wanderer named Vacchagotta walks up to him. Now, Vacchagotta isn't making small talk. He's got an agenda. He's seeking an absolute answer to this massive, foundational question about the nature of reality. He just comes right out and asks, "Now then, Venerable Gautama, is there a self?" Notice how extreme that directness is. Vacchagotta is demanding a definitive is there or isn't there. He's basically trying to cram the entire universe of human consciousness into this rigid, absolute, black and white binary. He wants the Buddha to solve the ultimate philosophical puzzle right then and there with a simple confirmation.
Section 2. The Deafening Silence.
So the Buddha's reaction to this ultimate binary question is what makes this specific encounter so absolutely fascinating, and frankly, deeply instructive for how we handle complex dilemmas today. Silence. The Buddha says absolutely nothing. He doesn't say yes, he doesn't say no, he doesn't even say, well, it's complicated. It is a deliberate, unapologetic refusal to provide the simple answer Vacchagotta is demanding. Imagine the tension in that moment. You ask one of the greatest spiritual teachers of the age the most important question imaginable, and he just sits there. Total crickets. Well, Vacchagotta is desperate for a clear binary answer, and he's probably a bit unnerved by the silence, so he immediately flips his question to its logical opposite. He asks, then is there no self? In his mind, if the answer isn't yes, it simply must be no. He is entirely trapped in this binary framework, completely convinced that the absolute truth has to be one extreme or the other. And the response? Silence. A second time, the Blessed One remains completely quiet. And at this point, a deeply frustrated Vacchagotta literally just gets up from his seat and leaves the conversation altogether. The rigid questioner walks away, having received absolutely nothing that fits into his neatly constructed, dualistic view of the world. Which leaves us staring at this burning question, right? Why didn't he answer? Fortunately, we aren't left entirely in the dark here. Right after Vacchagotta leaves, Venerable Ananda, who's one of the Buddha's closest followers, steps in. And Ananda essentially acts as our proxy. He looks at the Buddha and asks the exact question we're all wondering. Why did you not answer him? And guys, the Buddha's explanation is an absolute masterclass in critical thinking. Section 3. The Trap of Eternalism. The Buddha explains to Ananda that Vacchagotta hadn't just asked a question, he had unknowingly set a massive philosophical trap. And answering it directly would mean stepping right into it. If the Buddha had answered, yes, there is a self, he tells Ananda he would be conforming with a specific group of Brahmins and contemplatives who are exponents of eternalism. Now, eternalism is the view that there is an eternal, permanent, totally unchanging soul. By simply saying yes, the Buddha's nuanced teachings would be instantly flattened and misunderstood as a total endorsement of this extreme, rigid worldview. But there's a second part to this trap. If the Buddha had answered no, there is no self, he would be conforming with the exact opposite extreme, annihilationism. This is the view that death is the total annihilation of consciousness. Saying no would align him with this incredibly bleak, destructive philosophy, which was, actually, it was just as rigid and inaccurate as eternalism. So this brilliantly illustrates the perilous tightrope the Buddha was walking. Vacchagotta basically presented a coin with only two sides, an eternal, unchanging soul on one side, or total annihilation on the other. The Buddha recognized that reality exists completely outside of this flawed, limiting framework. To choose a side was to lose the truth entirely. Section 5. Preventing bewilderment. Now, there was another, even more compassionate reason for the silence. The Buddha's decision wasn't just about winning a philosophical debate. It was deeply rooted in his profound awareness of Vacchagotta's current mental and emotional state. He outlines this airtight if-then logic to Ananda. Step 1. If he says yes, it directly contradicts his own teachings regarding the knowledge that all phenomena are not self. But step 2. If he says no, Vacchagotta wouldn't suddenly achieve enlightenment. Because he was already confused, a no would just plunge him into even deeper bewilderment. Neither answer actually leads to understanding.
The Buddha spells out exactly what Vacchagotta's inner monologue would have been if he had answered no. He'd be thinking, does the self I used to have now not exist? I mean, you can literally feel the panic in that question, right? Vacchagotta believed he had a self. If the Buddha suddenly told him he didn't, it would trigger a state of intense psychological pain and enhanced bewilderment. The Buddha chose silence to literally spare this man from a spiral of confusing, destructive thoughts.
Section 6. Beyond the binary.
When we synthesize this entire interaction from the Ananda Sutta, we see that the Buddha's refusal to answer wasn't born of ignorance, and it definitely wasn't him just dodging a tough question. It was a highly deliberate tool. He used silence to step completely outside of a flawed framework. We see the overarching strategy he utilized. First, refusing the false binary entirely. Second, avoiding extreme philosophical traps like eternalism and annihilationism. And third, and perhaps most importantly, prioritizing the questioner's actual mental state over the urge to just spit out a technically simple answer. The Buddha didn't just teach the truth, he evaluated whether the person sitting right in front of him was actually in a position to receive it without being harmed by it.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away today. What false binaries are causing bewilderment in your own life? Where are you forcing a yes or no onto a situation that demands a much deeper, more nuanced understanding? The wisdom of the Ananda Sutta teaches us that sometimes the most intelligent and compassionate response to a rigid, extreme question is simply a strategic, thoughtful silence. It literally gives us permission to refuse the false choices the world hands us. Think about that as you navigate your own complex dilemmas this week. Thank you for diving into this explainer with me, and hey, keep questioning the framework.